This is sort of a public service announcement. It hasn't been long since we've covered the complex combos that Yixuan is capable of. And although they may not have as many inputs as, say, Harumasa, if you're trying to fit in as much as you can into the stun period, there's awkward inputs you have to deal with, 6 frame windows to animation cancel her ultimate, and specific combo links that you can't input buffer or mash your way out of. Which, in a way, can make her combos just as hard as the other highly technical characters we've got. But it wasn't my intent to make it seem like Yixuan needs these things to do well. Quite the opposite. If you're blinded by the flashy combos, you may end up missing out on far more effective routes and endgame content. SCS Windy, one of the best CM players that I've seen, was quick to upload a 6-cost kill of Corruption Complex with M0P1 Yixuan, M1P0 Trigger, and M1P0 Astra. But he did mention that a 5-cost kill would be possible with more optimized rotations. So I decided to give myself an afternoon to try it out, and sure enough, even when full of mistakes and without much optimization, I was able to kill Corruption Complex with a 5-cost team. And no, that did not include either M1 Yixuan or M1 Astra, but used M1 Trigger instead. The interesting thing was, at first I did try to use the highly optimized combos, which were without a doubt giving me more damage on every stun. But when it came to actually getting the kill, it was only when I completely ignored the fancy combo routes that I went over the line. So let's have a look at the run in full to show off how sometimes simple rotations can do better than perfect combos. As you can see, this run, despite being full of mistakes and entirely suboptimal combo routes, still managed to kill with 13 seconds left on the clock. For you to understand why it was better to just go wild with triple chains and not bother with getting the most damage out of stun, it's probably worth us going through these characters and their builds, because they do matter. Astra doesn't have enough attack percent subs to cap out her buff with an energy regen D6 and game ball, but we're really not missing much, and with how sheer scaling works, the damage loss is negligible. You shouldn't need to run energy regen D6 if you can work around Astra's buffs well, but it makes it so much more comfortable that I'd recommend it. Even if you're well short of maxing out her buff, as it means managing uptime becomes a hell of a lot easier. To be honest, Pan would actually provide more damage than Astra would, while also being a lot easier to build. Between M6 Pan and M0 Astra, Pan could very well be better, especially if you have Tusks of Fury. But the reason Astra worked well for me is because she can use Game Ball. To be honest, most support Wenjins just aren't good for Yixuan teams. Since Sheer is only 30% of attack, any of the usual Wenjins, like Kaboom the Cannon or Bashful Demon, don't offer many benefits. The Volt just doesn't have good uptime either, so the only good Wenjins here would be Astra's Signature or Game Ball. But the interesting thing is, a P5 Game Ball would be stronger than Astra's Signature. The 20% crit rate bonus Game Ball provides makes it so much easier to build Yixuan, as between her Wenjin, Yunkui Tales 4-piece set, and Game Ball, you only need 48% crit rate to cap her out. And thankfully, that means we don't have to worry too much about her build. Keep in mind that Yixuan does not scale well with attack percent, and doesn't scale at all with pen, so HP percent and crit stats are the priority. And the extra crit rate is great for a last team slot too. Since Game Ball applies to the whole team, this means Trigger's crit rate should be buffed too. It is true that we don't get Trigger's additionals at all in this comp, so her daze is really lacking. But if you haven't watched my Trigger guide, let's just say that despite being a stunner, she can pump pretty good damage. Not to mention that Yixuan and Trigger actually have good synergy, as all of Yixuan's EX special casts from her Ink Manifestation string can initiate Tartarus shots. And since she has two ultimates, that means Yixuan can single-handedly activate both of Trigger's ultimate Tartarus shots. With Corruption Complex more or less stunning himself with impairs, the raw damage that she provides, as well as the ability to run the new King of the Summit Drive Disc set, means that she can be a strong sub-DPS unit that still provides enough days to get 4 stuns on the fight. Given that the only Mindscape we got is Triggers, we can make the most out of her reduced Aftershock cooldown to pump as much damage from her. And damage really is what Trigger offers to this team, because as Yixuan makes use of Sheer Force, she completely ignores all enemy defense. So Trigger's signature weapon is worthless here, as a Death Shred just won't help. Normally the best pick for a kill run here would be Steam Oven, but Astra's Daze build is non-existent. Although some Trigger comps, like Zhuyuan, Trigger and Nicole, are able to hit 5 stuns on Corruption Complex, as soon as Astra fills a slot, that's a long dead dream. So instead, we're shooting for only 4 stuns. Without needing to push for that 5th stun, that means we don't even need to use an impact percent D6. Attack percent will give us more damage, and when coupled with the Restrained, Trigger has practically become a DPS unit. When I first started these Corruption Complex attempts, it was by the book. I tried to set up my stuns with the necessary resources and made use of chains to animation cancel my ultimate to milk every last point of damage. And yet, these runs were getting 61 to 62,000. Unsurprisingly, I struggled to get 4 full stuns in the fight. I would get all the way down to just half a health bar, but the run would end before I could go through the whole stun period. I tried to optimize Daze build, use different Wenjins, make use of both Shockstar and Summit sets for the most amount of days. All different kinds of combinations to land on the right amount. And sure enough, I would get 4 stuns in and then some, but the loss of damage from Trigger meant I was just a little short to be able to eke out the kill. Luck was a massive factor too, with how stupidly janked this boss can be. Felt like every stun I tried doing an optimal combo on would be screwed over by his ridiculous hurt box. I decided to look back at footage of some runs to figure out what did I do that worked and what didn't. How could I optimize the runs and combos further? A consistent theme was that I kept getting Trigger's ultimate just before a stun, which would mess up the combos if I used it late. But at the same time, it was just a waste of decibels if I held it. And with how difficult getting around the daze requirements were with Yixuan and Astra, this was being a limiting factor. Since chain attacks generate a fair bit of decibels and counted for the King of the Summit set, what if I were to just not care about optimal combos and prioritize trigger chains instead? Turns out doing exactly that got the kill. So let's go through this rotation and go step by step on the things I did and the things I failed to do. because there is so much more that can be optimized in this run. If there is one thing I feel was done pretty darn well though, is the opener, and it's both the most straightforward part of this fight as well as the most annoying. We start with a standard trigger Astra setup, namely by using Astra Special to put her in a delicate cadenza before the fight even begins. That way, we can start the fight with Trigger and begin building her purge, only to quick assist to Yixuan as soon as the 4th shot lands, letting us skip the long finishing shot animation. Make sure that you whiff the first shot, either by early casting or using the slide tech, as otherwise the quick assist prompt will fall off just as the 4th shot lands. From this point, holding Cloud Shaper should just about break a leg. With a high decibel build from both Cloud Shaper and the Impair, Yixuan's already at almost 3000. Even the damage Trigger is meant to pump in this fight, we'll quick assist to her to get Astra's buff on, then immediately swap to Astra so that we can go back to Yixuan. With this, we're already at 3 stacks of Astral Voice. What we want to do now though is get the 3 stacks of Yunkui Tales before Yixuan's ultimate is ready. And after just a few basics, Corruption Complex will do an attack. Ink Manifestation is the obvious choice of EX here, giving us a parry and an adrenaline refund, which we then follow onto Celestial Cloud Blitz Break, the spin to win attack, which gives us just enough decibels for the ultimate. Since Cloud Shaper is an EX, Ink Manifestation is an EX, and the Celestial Cloud Blitz Break follow-up is also an EX, that means that all of them count for Yunkui Tales stacks, meaning we're fully capped out. It's very important to not use the ultimate here though. Here, not in the sense of time, but in the sense of positioning. We need to be in the right place for it, which we get by moving diagonally behind the middle leg. Doing this means that Yixuan will dive through the middle leg and hit Corruption Complex's back leg instead, giving us an instant impair and a 1000 decibel refund. Which also means it's important to not go into Qingming Eruption, the wing attack, as doing so will break the leg before you can use ultimate. And even if it doesn't, it means you're likely going to be lacking in adrenaline for the stun period. So just play it safe and stop after Celestial Cloud Blitz Break. Back to the run. Once our ultimate is used, the next goal is to break the final middle leg to get enough decibels for the stun state, and time it so that the impair brings us over to the stun period. For that, we'll need a bit of extra daze boost from Trigger, so we'll swap to her, use EX, quick assist to Yixuan to refresh Astra's buff, and hold Cloud Shaper. Just as intended, the combination of daze from Trigger and impair means the stun state begins just as we finish channeling Cloud Shaper, and that's our opener. I did say this is the most annoying part of the run, and with good reason. Corruption Complex has a habit of jumping out over and over and over, which means we miss the ultimate and get no leg break. Or he'll just turn around, which means you might hit an already broken leg and also get nothing from it. In fact, if you're paying attention, you have noticed that he did turn in this run. We didn't break its right side back and middle legs, we broke the left side front and middle legs. Thankfully, it's okay if he turns. All we care for is the 2 leg breaks after ultimate in time for the stun, so there's some wiggle room here. As the stun begins, you notice I was using manual chain, but it isn't actually needed. Sure, you can get a Tatra shot with it, but that's actually a problem. Since I swapped the trigger right after, it's mostly wasted, so it'd have been better for me to just swap cancel the trigger before the Ashen Ink explosion landed and save it. I did say this run wasn't particularly well optimized. When it comes to this first stun, we're chaining with everyone. No complicated combos, no fancy rotations, not even double Yixuan chains. Just send it. Normally it'd be good to start with Trigger's chain attack, so that she can apply the King of the Summit buff, but as we used the EX special with her just a few moments prior, it's better for us to delay her chain to be the second, so that we get to refresh the buff a little later and have it last longer. It's also worth using Yixuan's chain first here, because the 40% crit damage buff from her ultimate is just about to run out, so we want to capitalize on it while we still can. It's not that big a deal though, and the only thing we really care about is ending on Astra, so that we can quick assist to Yixuan and refresh the Astral Voice buff. From there, we use another ultimate to refresh the buff and then go straight into Cloud Shaper, which will give us just enough technique points to use her Talisman ultimate. This is a mistake on my part. I ended Cloud Shaper early instead of casting it in full, scared that I didn't have enough time to land the entire Talisman ultimate in stun, but it turns out there was plenty of time left. Since we aren't using optimized sun rotations where we do auric array cancels, we abuse the fact that you can go straight into it after Yixuan's ultimates without going through the dodge animation. And this is a run where we actually don't want to interrupt auric array. With how quickly Corruption Complex is getting stunned, we need as much adrenaline as we can get. From here, we swap the trigger, which refreshes Astra's buff, and then do a few basics just to get us enough decibels to use her ultimate. Remember, the whole reason we're doing these unoptimized sun rotations is because we're working around Trigger's decibels. Any second we spend not using her ultimate is a waste of resources. After that, we quick assist to Yixuan to reapply Astra's buff, and then we just start using basics to build adrenaline. We actually want to be hitting an intact leg, as from this point on we need to get one leg break every stun. Any more and we're overcapping on decibels and build days too fast to have enough resources for the stun burst. Any less and there just won't be enough days and decibels for that burst. Since there's 3 legs left and we've only got 3 stuns to go, it adds up nicely. We actually get lucky here with a parryable attack, which gives us a nice decibel boost for trigger and a little extra days. But unfortunately I mess up the ink manifestation swap, meaning I lose out on the adrenaline refund. For reference, it's possible to do a dodge counter assist stack with Yixuan's ink manifestation, getting both the adrenaline refund and a defensive assist from it. It was only after this run that I figured out that this is actually not a good thing to do, as unlike with dodge counter assists, doing so seems to prevent Yixuan from getting the adrenaline bonus from defensive assists. So you're better off just doing the dodge counter assist stack, which is both a lot easier to do and better for your runs. Either way, we make do of what we have, and in this case, I use Astra to reposition to the middle leg. She can be surprisingly useful at repositioning, so it's worth using if you only need to move around 1 or 2 legs. Corruption Complex will naturally be attacking, so just try and get some parries with Ink Manifestation. This time, as we want to break the legs, we do want to go into Qingming Eruption. Just be cautious about the Auric Ink gauge here. Remember that bug with Pompeii where he'd just stand around and do nothing for ages after being burnt? That seems to be the case of Auric Ink now, as bosses will usually just stand for a good 5 seconds without any actions when corrupted. This is pretty bad as we do want to be parrying with Ink Manifestation, so just be mindful of it. Back to the rotation, Astra's gotten her ultimate and we're using it early. Do swap out of it before the final hit so you don't accidentally break a leg. It's important to use it at this point, because it should allow for it to be up just in time for a 3rd stun. From here, things get a little messy. I do an Ink Manifestation parry and then use Astra's Quick Assist chain to trigger and go for her EX before the stun. It's okay to use it on trigger instead of pocketing for Yixuan, because if you swap into a character through Astra's Quick Assist chain, that will not apply Astral Voice, so pick your poison. Either you get Astral for your burst, or you don't and instead get 1 extra chain's worth of damage. As for using EX just before the stun on trigger, this is a good thing actually. With this setup, we should have more than enough days to hit 4 stuns, so making use of coordinated support for instant damage is a good call. What is a problem is that instead of swap cancelling out of Cloud Shaper and going to trigger, I don't do that and just pop the chain. So now we can't use Yixuan chain first, which means I use Trigger's chain first instead, which is fine, not that big an issue. But then I go into Astra chain. That's not a good thing, as if you recall, we don't get Astral Voice if Yixuan is the last one coming, as we won't have a Quick Assist prompt. So this isn't a particularly good stun rotation, with a lot of wasted damage. At the very least, it's pretty straightforward. Talisman Ultimate, Decibel Ultimate, Cloud Shaper, and then, as with the first stun, go into Auric Array while swapping to trigger to do a few basics. That builds enough decibels to ultimate, and we're now repeating what we did last time around. We go find a leg to break, and an Ink Manifestation string does that no problem. So now it's just getting to the next stun while not breaking a leg. I do use Trigger's EX here, but this is also suboptimal. As mentioned before, we've got plenty of days for 4 stuns, so this isn't really needed. Although since this refreshes the King of the Summit set, it's not that bad to do it out of stun. I was dangerously close to breaking that leg though, so a quick reposition with Astra and then basic looping on Yixuan is good enough to take us to the next stun. As before though, I mess up the order. I don't swap cancel to trigger, and I use Astra chain second instead of last, so again missing out on Astral Voice. We're also just a little short on both technique points and adrenaline for this stun. Thankfully, because Astra's ultimate lines up here, we can double swap to her to get her ultimate into a Yixuan chain. With the extra adrenaline regen on ally ultimates and the extra time we bought, that's enough for a quick Cloud Shaper to build enough technique points for the Talisman ultimate. But I screwed that up too. Being too hasty, I didn't let the Ashen Ink explosion land, so I completely lost out on its damage this stun. Not to mention still having time left in stun that could have been used for a few extra Cloud Shaper ticks. Either way, as before, we go into Auric Array and swap the trigger. This time, we get a chain from Astra, meaning a handy King of the Summit buff for this out of stun period. As we didn't get lucky with any defensive assists on the last out of stun period, and stunned a little too fast as a result of Trigger's early EX, she's still ways away from her ultimate. As the next stun is the final stun though, so long as we get it before 70 or so on the days bar, we should be fine. Using EX out of stun as I do here can work, as we're in dire need of these decibels, so any extra build we get is welcome. But it shouldn't be necessary. If possible, you don't want to EX here and will want to save it for the stun period, which we'll touch on in a bit. After the EX though, it's back to Yixuan and looping basics. Sadly, Auric Ink anomaly ticks here and interrupts Corruption Complex, but no bug this time, so we get to parry his attack with Ink Manifestation, break the leg, and get some nice damage from it. Then it's just building up to that final stun. But I again mess up, not using Manual Chain and instead letting the Qingming Eruption start the stun. And again, I don't have Astra as the last chain. For this final stun though, we don't want to use Trigger's chain attack, and in fact, we don't even want to use Astra's chain attack. Since this is the last stun burst we'll get in this fight, decibels are no longer a factor. We won't be getting another Trigger or Astra ultimate, so out of all the stuns, this should be the one that follows one of the optimized in-stun rotations. It's because of this that we'd want to reserve Trigger's EX for the stun period, as we aren't using Trigger Chain to get the King of the Summit buff. I'm a little fed up with not getting Astral Voice, so I quick assist the Trigger, which has the added benefit of refreshing Astra's buff on her, and then quick assist back to Yixuan and go for her ultimate. But being skinned with my Cloud Shape as previously means I ended up just a little short of technique points. As we're very close though, one more basic in the Cloud Shaper gives us a Talisman ultimate, which finishes things off, with a full 13 seconds left on the timer. Part of the ultimate should have landed in the out of stun period here, but we're so far ahead in damage that it doesn't matter. And that's kind of the run. Proof you don't need to be super optimal with combos to get kills if you can manage the out of stun period well. Even that wasn't done flawlessly. With how much time we had left in this run, you won't need anywhere near this level of investment to be able to get a kill with these units. Drive discs that are a fair bit worse off would be more than enough to kill, especially if the rotation was optimized. I won't say with certainty if a full cost Yixuan Trigger Astra comp would be enough, but if optimized, it'd at the very least come close to a kill, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see one in the future. But I did say that Pan's buffs are stronger than Astra, so if you can meet the crit rate requirements without Game Ball, then a full cost run with M1 P1 Yixuan, M0 Trigger, and M6 Pan would be able to kill. And I say that with certainty, because Zhao Yiran managed to do so, whose run I link in the description. I hope you've enjoyed this little breakdown. Although I do like the technical play that you're rewarded for with Yixuan, let us be reminded that it shouldn't blind you to more optimal routes. Sometimes, a simple approach is the best approach. I may focus on niche character tech and breaking down game mechanics, but I will go through the uncomplicated stuff too when it's the better choice. So do like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified for when I drop more content. I've got more videos coming. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.